How's it going, New York Yankee fans? Welcome back to Fireside Yankees with your boys, Alex and Ryan. Today we're talking about Jake Bauers, one of the more underrated depth pieces and a guy that Ryan and I have been talking about very, very extensively over the past couple months. Leading up to when he was originally promoted, we really like Jake Bauers, and you may not believe it, but he's actually one of our best offensive pieces, and he's a really good utility piece. He can play all the outfield spots. He's actually a good defender at first base, believe it or not. He's played over 2,000 innings there in his career. We're going to kind of break down what he's done for this Yankee team this year. Now, I don't think he's a starter. I don't think that anyone thinks he's a starter, but he's a really good first reserve. Like, if you need to supplement an injury, if you need him to go up and face off against right-handed pitching, he's a really good lefty batter against right-handed pitchers, and I think that's kind of where you're going to see his statistics, his value is quite evident. It's quite obvious. Now, Ryan, I know you're a big fan of Jake Bauers. We really had his back early on. He's turned into a pretty good piece for us. I think a lot of people would agree with that. But, before we dive into Jake Bauers, what he has to offer in the future, because he's only 27 years old, how you do today, my friend?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. And, ultimately, I actually really like Jake Bauers' offensive profile. Now, he'll never be a guy who can be a full-time starter just because he can't hit left-handed pitching, right? Like, in terms of raw skill set, I think he has what it takes offensively to do that, but he's not going to be able to hit left-handed pitching. I think that's more of a pitch recognition thing. That's one of those things that you kind of have to let him play against lefties in order for that to work. But if you're the Yankees, are you trying to develop Jake Bauers? He's kind of what he already is. So I think you're okay with the outcomes you're getting from him thus far. And this offseason, you can get a little creative, maybe bring in some guys who have versatility at other positions and can play first base against lefties, because there are not a lot of left-handed pitchers in the league. They're more right-handed pitchers. So it's better to be a strong side platoon, which is, a guy who hits right-handed pitching, than it is to be a weak side platoon, which is a guy who can only hit left-handed pitching. I imagine that's what the Yankees were looking for this deadline. We know that they were linked to guys like Randall Grichuk, Tommy Pham, Mark Canha. All of these guys did better against lefties than righties. I'd actually be interested in a Mark Canha type to platoon with Bauers, but that's a different conversation. For Jake Bauers this year, he has a 119 WRC plus, slugging 500. Against right-handed pitching specifically, he's hitting obviously a lot better. He has a 130 WRC plus. He's hit all 11 home runs against them in just 155 at-bats, an 11.3% walk rate. This profile is really good, right? Like, overall, he gets the ball in the air a ton. He loves barreling the baseball. He's got a barrel rate over 20%. That's Aaron Judge-like, right? And I'm obviously not saying Jake Bauers is Aaron Judge, but you get what I'm saying here. He goes out, he works walks, he doesn't chase too often. This is the type of guy that, when you have against right-handed pitching, is a really nice piece to have and a plus bat, right? I tweeted this yesterday when he worked that walk with bases loaded. Really, the Yankees don't have a lot of guys from the left-handed side that provide them power and on base skills. I know that Bauers doesn't have a pretty average or, pretty contact rates, but quite frankly, we can't really be picky about the type of bat we have. We just need a plethora of good bats, right? And, going forward, obviously Anthony Rizzo coming back from, his concussion protocol at some point, whether that's this year or next, is going to be, something the Yankees are going to have to look into. Like, what is he at this point in his career? How much of his struggles have to do with that? Because end of the day, right, like, that's, when we're talking about brain, trauma and head trauma, like, those are things that are a lot more difficult to project going forward than, a typical, like, oh, the guy messed up his hamstring, he pulled his hamstring, right? Or, he twisted his ankle, whatever it may be. Bauers is kind of going to be asked to play as much as the Yankees need him to. We really don't know when Rizzo's coming back. So, I don't know if he's going to keep getting starts against lefties. I know that he got that start against McClanahan. Not a big fan of that. At first base, he's overall a pretty good defender. So, like, at least you have that. But, you got to kind of figure out who's that guy against lefties. I imagine it's LeMahieu, but, LeMahieu doesn't inspire much confidence at the plate right now. I know he's been hitting a little bit better lately, but overall in the season, it's kind of been, he's on the brink of breaking through, but he hasn't gotten it just yet. It's kind of like Giancarlo Stanton, where it's like, it feels like these guys are getting hot, but it's like they haven't necessarily found it. You know what I mean? So Jake Bauers has been a nice breath of fresh air, because on a team of guys who are underperforming, it's really been him, Torres, and Judge who have kept, either A, gotten better from last year in Jake Bauers' case, B, is right around where they were last year in Glaber's case, and in Judge's case, he's always amazing, so it doesn't really matter. But, you got at least one guy who's doing something for you, right? Like, I can't believe that out of all the bats we didn't add, that Jake Bauers is somehow the most important guy we somehow ended up getting. But it's hard for me to sit here and, talk about the offense in a positive light because of how bad they've been, but it's easy to see how Jake Bowers is liked by the organization. And overall, I guess the question I have for you, Alex, is, when Rizzo comes back, because you have Bowers for the next 3 years because of arbitration, of the way the service time works, like, what do you see Jake Bowers as going forward? Because I kind of think you need to keep playing against righties. Until I see the Yankees collect a lineup of 9 guys that are competent against right-handed pitching, I'm going to want to see Bowers out there in some form, even if it means getting terrible play in the outfield.
Yeah, well, you say terrible play in the outfield. He's a really, really, really bad outfielder, and like that's where we run into a bit of a problem. That's where we kind of start to question ourselves in the sense that, you know what? Okay, it's like he's not a starter. We know this, but he's really good against right-handed pitching, as you kind of referenced, and the defense there is certainly not good. In the outfield, in his entire career, he's played 1,169 innings. He has a .988 fielding percentage. He has -7 defensive runs saved just this season alone, and -3 outs above average. So, interestingly, last year, or rather in 2021 with Seattle, 300 innings, had 4 defensive runs saved. Like, he wasn't bad, but they also had him playing a little bit in left field, and they had him in right field, but no center field, and I don't think he's ever actually played center field before. So he's a competent. It could just be Yankee Stadium for what it's worth. Like, left field in Yankee Stadium is not easy, and that's where they've been using him. Maybe if you put him in right field, you have a little bit better results. But left field, like, you've seen IKF struggle, you've seen Bauer struggle, you've seen kind of everyone have a tough time there. So we'll see how they kind of operate there moving forward. But first base, he's been pretty solid, and maybe Ryan, this might be crazy to say, but if this is like the first time we've seen Bowers like take a big step forward offensively. Like, in the past, he's struggled. Like, he's never been a great offensive player. 119 WRC plus 11 homers this year, 25 RBIs. Now, the strikeout rate's at 32%, certainly not great, but he's walking at 10.7%. The power's there. He's a fine player. You'd like to see that strikeout number like at least drop around to like the 25-24% range, and I think he can do that. But the Yankees are asking him to hit for power. They're asking him to kind of utilize that hit strikes hard concept. Now, I'll ask you this: if he continues to improve offensively, and he's only 27 years old, is there a future for him at first base on this team when Rizzo's contract inevitably expires? Like, if he keeps getting better offensively, do you think that we could see him potentially fill first base for a season?
I'm not going to lie. I think it would make a little bit of sense for them to at least consider moving on from Rizzo in the offseason and seeing if they can platoon at first base. If you look at what you're paying for at first base, right, most of it's going to come from offense, right? First base defense is valuable, but it's not as valuable as other positions. Being a good defensive first baseman is less valuable in terms of wins above replacement. It's like being a good defensive shortstop. And that makes sense, right? Less ground to cover, a little less defensive impact. I know technically they're involved in every ground out or almost every ground out because most throws are made to first base, but catching a baseball on a throw is a lot different than fielding it, right? And I think that when we're looking at, overall defensive impact, first base is not high up on that list relative to other position groups. Bowers has been an okay defensive first baseman. He steadily got better. That's his natural position. He hasn't stood out there, which I actually think is a good thing, right? I feel like if I don't really notice you at first base, okay, I'll take it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not like, oh man, this guy's a butcher out there. The problem with Voit with the Yankees, when Luke Voit was with the team, was that you noticed him at first base. You felt having Luke Voit at first base, and that was a good and a bad thing. Good thing offensively, bad thing defensively. You just hope Jake Bowers can stabilize it, and you just need to find somebody who can hit left-handed pitching, which is typically, like, that's something that the market doesn't value very high because there aren't a lot of lefties out there. You can get that for pretty cheap. I mean, the Yankees got Jake Bowers for really cheap. Like, you mean to tell me you can't find a guy who can just mash left-handed pitching? It could be a guy who's an outfielder who can also play first base, hopefully more competent defensively than Bowers is in the outfield, but that's certainly possible. Overall, what you're looking for is, just production from the position, right? And it doesn't feel like they're going to get that from Rizzo. And if they do, that's great. I like Anthony Rizzo. Like, I think when Anthony Rizzo is going right, he's really important to this team because, he has the contact numbers that Bowers doesn't have. And when he's right, he has the home run numbers that other guys have. But overall, like, if you get that 130 WRC plus versus right-handed pitching, and then like a 120 from a different platoon guy against left-handed pitching, you've got around a 125 WRC plus from first base. You don't put a lot of financial, capital into that position. It allows you to invest in other places. If you were to free up like $10 million of the $20 million you owe next year to Anthony Rizzo, that can go to an outfield bat, like a corner outfielder, someone who can help you. That could go to, chipping in to get to a much better position player. It helps avoid tax penalties, whatever that may be. Like, overall, the Yankees kind of can, I think, replace what Rizzo does against right-handed pitching. They just need to replace what he does against lefties, which doesn't seem hard for a team that has an abundance of right-handed hitters. And, ultimately, just see what you have in Jake Bauers. This is going to be a nice little 2-month stretch for him to get some run and see what he's got. As you mentioned, there are some things you'd like him to work on. Really, it's the whiff rates. Like, yes, he's got a big lofty swing, but you hope that maybe there's a little bit better bat control, maybe a little bit more barrel accuracy, even if it's 28% for the strikeout rate. Like, that's going to be good enough, more than good enough. And you'll see a staggering difference in his offensive production. And then pulling more fly balls. You'll see a lot of fly balls for Jake Bauers where it's like, oh, it just died in center field. Or, oh, it's off the wall. I thought that ball was gone. Because he's hitting it to the deepest part of the ballpark. So you got to hit it to right field, right? You're a lefty. Pull the ball, right? If you pull the ball a little bit more in the air, you're going to get a lot more home runs. This is a guy who can hit 25, 30 home runs in Yankee Stadium. Like, he's got that level of raw power. I don't want to underestimate that. And, again, platooning, it works, right? Like, there are teams who do it all the time. It's a more modern approach. And overall, I mean, you're waiting for maybe a Murakami. Maybe Weld moves to first base. There are different ways. Like, we talked about Murakami in the offseason as, like, a perfect guy for the Yankees. Like, is there really a guy out there outside of like the Freddie Freemans and Matt Olsons of the world who, funnily enough, the Yankees had a chance to get? Outside of those guys, who do you really want to be paying a bunch of money to at first base, right? Like, it's just not a position you want to throw a lot of money at. So why throw $20 million there when you can make it $10 million just to pay Rizzo for this year and then work with a platoon for now that's going to be low cost and allow you to invest in other positions?
And I think that's the thing. Like, right now, I am 100% on board with making Jake Bauers like a key depth piece on this team. Like, I think that the upside is certainly there. He fixed a lot of his swing with AAA, and they've given him the opportunity. He's run with it. Like, he's leading off for the Yankees right now, which is not ideal by any means. But his on base rate isn't the most exciting thing. Aaron Judge really struggled against the Astros. I don't know what it is with Judge, but he cannot hit against the Astros. Everybody else, the guy mashes, but some reason they know how to pitch to him. Like, they just know how to get to him. I don't know what it is, but hopefully we'll have a little bit better luck against Chicago White Sox over the next 3 days. But let's talk about that for a second, Ryan. A little bit away from Jake Bauers, but the Yankees are 4.5 games out of the wild card now. Things are not getting better. The starting rotation is in disarray. Herman is out. Luis Severino should be in the bullpen. I mean, Rodon could be out for weeks with a left hamstring injury. We'll see what happens. We'll have more information on that today, so check out our social media platforms if you want that news. But, Ryan, when you're looking at the team right now, it looks like we're going to have to lean on some youngsters in the rotation. Randy Vasquez, I know Brito got sent back to AAA, but, he could be called up soon enough. Where do you go from here? Like, what needs to happen? In my opinion, you have to sweep the White Sox. You have to sweep a bad Chicago White Sox team. Dylan Cease today on the mound against Garrett Cole. This is a must-win game. Like, you need to beat teams that are shitty when they have bad pitchers on the mound, and you have to leverage Garrett Cole standout performances because he is on a Cy Young tear right now. What needs to happen over the next couple weeks for the Yankees to get back on track? It starts with sweeping Chicago, in my opinion.
Yeah, we've left the territory of like moral victories and we've been far gone from that territory, but you're 4.5 games out. I kind of want to see what like certain guys are going to be next year. This is why I have such there were so many frustrations around this team not being permitted to sell. That report about how not letting the front office sell is going to bother me for a very long time because and I mean this in the nicest way possible, right? Like, Kenyon Middleton, is he coming back next year? He's good. Is he coming back next year, though? Like, he's been good with the Yankees so far. The answer is no, right? Like, I feel like I'm wasting my time watching these guys. Unless they make the playoffs, all of this is a waste. Everything they're doing right now is a waste of time, right? Let me see Vasquez. Let me see what these guys a starter. Let me see. I guess I got to see Brito because you're going to have, if you have Rodon on the IL, I shouldn't see Severino. Severino should not get another start. There's no reason to. He's not good anymore. He's cooked. He's not good. There's no reason to keep starting him. He's not going to come back next year. There's no reason for that. When Montas comes back, I actually really want to see him pitch because you might think about bringing him back next year, but you're not going to bring back Severino. He's far gone. There's no just a flyer, try it deal. No, he's bad. From the offensive side of things, let me see Peraza. Let me see Pereira at some point. Let me see what I've got, right? Because I don't think this team is making the postseason. They've got to now leapfrog the Mariners too. The Mariners have played really good baseball lately. They have a lot easier of a schedule. And I think they either had the season series or were tied. it just doesn't. This is not the year the Yankees are going to be making the postseason, it feels like. And I was very confident that coming into the season, this team just really underperformed. So, I kind of need to see what I've got in the farm. The way I look at it is like Gleyber Torres is giving me enough pause of like, yeah, this guy's playing more than well enough for him to be back next year and be a part of this team long term. But is Oswald Peraza gonna be part of this? Is Oswald Peraza gonna be part of this core? I'm not sure, right? I'd like to see if he's capable, right? Everson Pereira, like, what does that look like? Opens up AAA for Jason Dominguez perhaps at some point. He's been playing a lot better lately. Jake Bauers obviously is a guy you're looking at because of the years of control that you're trying to see if he's legit or not, or if this is just a fluke. Judge, what you've got in him. Do I need to know what a veteran like Kyle Higashioka is over like maybe getting Austin Wells reps? Maybe you know what I mean? Like, I think at this point, Alex, we're in the like, you got to see what you've got territory. Yeah, they have to sweep the White Sox, but if they sweep the White Sox and the Blue Jays lose, they lose 2 of their next 3, the Yankees are still 2.5 out, and they still might be behind the Mariners. So it's like, they had an opportunity. Like, this was the stretch that they were supposed to play well in, not the Orioles, Rays, Astros, the one before that. They were supposed to get reinforcements for those series, and they didn't, right? Like, end of the day, it's Hal's fault for them not selling. It's if they were going to buy, and, if Cashman felt like this team wasn't worth buying for, that at that point, like, what am I supposed to sit here and criticize him for? Like, I don't have my quarrels with him, but I'm not going to, like, knock the guy for not buying if he thought they should have sold. But at the same time, if you're not going to sell, you kind of should buy, even if it's just Tommy Pham, right? You know what I mean? So end of the day, the front office quit on this team. Like, the front office and ownership either quit on this, the front office and or ownership, one of the two, if not both, quit on this team already. What reason is there to think that they're going to make the playoffs? Like, Cashman doesn't think they're going to make the playoffs. He didn't buy, so he doesn't think they're going to make the playoffs. Why should we, if you get what I'm saying here?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the take. Like, why should we believe that? And, right now, it's not looking so great, but I will say this, I'm really happy we kept Gleyber. He's one of the only guys producing, and I think that he's probably walking himself into an extension at this point. Here's a kind of a take, though. I think that they may consider Oswald Peraza as a future utility piece on the infield. I think that maybe there is a world where we see J.J. LeMahieu start at third base next year, and Oswald Peraza takes over that utility role in the infield. Like, he can play third base, shortstop, and second base. Probably can't play first base, but you could just move DJ there, worst case, or Bauers, as we've discussed earlier in this episode. I think that they may view Oswald as a utility man. I think right now you have IKF. He can play the outfield, infield, whatever it might be. Maybe DJ ends up starting at third base, or maybe Oswald starts at third base and DJ remains in that utility role. There is a future there where there's going to be some decisions, but right now they've destroyed Oswald Peraza's value enough. Like, they could have traded him for a really solid starting pitcher on the up and up, but I think that value's gone. Like, I think they've completely torched it, and mainly because they keep sending the guy back down and don't give him any opportunities, and they're using his minor league options up left and right. Like, that may be one of the biggest blunderings I've ever seen of a prospect before. Like, Peraza at one point could have fetched you a good starting pitcher. Now you're lucky if you get anything remotely close to that. So at this point, I think the Yankees are probably better off just keeping him, seeing what he's got, incorporating him into their plans, whether it be as a starter or a utility man in the infield, and you go from there, and you hope to God that some other prospects step up. Jason Dominguez, we're going to see he's performing a lot better. Trey Sweeney's been excellent. Ryan made a video about him recently that's really breaks him down well if you want to take a look at that. He could be a third base option in the future. So, the Yankees have youngsters that look good. Everson Pereira, we may see him this year in the outfield. I'd love to see Pereira. He's killing it in AAA still. So, there's a lot to see, a lot to do, a lot of youngsters coming up, but the Yankees don't like to use them. So that's kind of the big qualm that we have with the front office right now. But guys, I'd love to hear your perspectives below on Bauers. It's kind of the state of the team. Obviously the youngsters you'd like to see. Always happy to see your perspectives down below. Make sure to like and subscribe as always, and we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Yankees episode.